We'll have James, people in.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Just while we're waiting on a few more to join the call, if you can take a little moment just to read our ground rules that we've got on the screen. Please make sure that your camera is turned off for the duration of the call, that you're on mute, and appropriate language is used when sending questions into our host. The chat function is open. It will go to our host. If you have any questions for any of our guest speakers, ensure that their name is in front of that question if it's targeted to a specific person on the call. We'll be getting going in a couple of minutes. We'll just wait for a few more people to join the call.
James, are you going to give us a song while we're waiting?
Oh no, I think that was on Rob. That I'm sure Rob was going to sing his favourite song.
Cheers for that, James. But I think I'll pass on that. I'll throw it over to Gary, I think.
Hey, I'm more than happy to sing a song, but I'm not sure how many participants will stay on the call if I do that.
One of my tips was going to be to own it and don't pass responsibility to other people, but you three have just failed.
I'll have to learn that one, David. Right, okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to get started with the call now. First of all, thanks everyone for joining us. If you've just joined us, make sure you're reading through some of our ground rules that we've got on our screen currently. Make sure your camera's turned off, you're on mute at all times, and make sure you're using appropriate language when sending questions into our host. You can send questions in relation to our call today and to our specific guests on the call. If those can go into the chat function, they will go to our host Rob, who will be vetting them, and he'll be asking them out at the end in the end section. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see our faces now. Thanks again for joining the call. My name's James and I'm the Employability Project Lead. Joining me on the call today are my team, which is Gary, Jane and Rob. They'll be helping out with the logistics of the call. For those of you who've not joined us for any of our Careers Uncovered events, this is the 9th event we've run so far. These events are essentially to look at careers and to gain an insight into the careers of professionals in different sectors. Today's is focused on recruitment. This is kind of a wraparound event of the previous 8 events that we've covered, and we're going to be kind of looking at different areas within the call. Today we are joined by 3 wonderful guest speakers. Really happy to kind of have these speakers with us. And what I'll do, I'll just give a brief overview of them now, and then we can go into them talking about their careers and talking about their pathway and their current organisation and job roles that they're working in at the moment. So first of all, I'll give an overview of Nicola. Nicola Webb. So Nicola is the owner of Robert's Webb Recruitment. It's a successful recruitment business based on the Wirral. They support businesses across the Northwest, whilst also offering advice and guidance for candidates who are looking for new roles. Nicola has over 12 years of experience within recruitment, working with SMEs as well as global organisations. Nicola has enjoyed a varied interest in recruitment career to date and enjoys the challenge of running her own business. So first of all, Nicola, welcome to the call. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Next up to introduce is David Wafer, who is the Managing Director of McIver Recruitment. McIver is an award-winning recruitment company based in Liverpool that uses psychometric personality profiling with clients and candidates, which I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that particular area, David. David has 20 years experience in the recruitment sector and has himself won an array of business awards. David has been the chair of the Institute of Directors for the Liverpool City region since 2019, as well as an advisor for the Liverpool Chamber of Commerce Business and Policy Committee, and very recently has been appointed to the LSE Foundation Advisory Board. David, thank you very much for being here today. Welcome to the call.
Welcome.
And last up, we've got Simon Ward, who's the founder and CEO of JobzLab. JobzLab was developed to help job hunters to land the right job fast. Simon is the host of the Job Search Accelerator program, lead coach at the Job Search Gym, host of the Hear and Get Hired podcast. He's worked with candidates on both sides of the recruitment market for over 30 years, holding senior roles in both headhunting and recruitment firms. He's been founder of 3 successful recruitment and HR transformation companies and held executive responsibility for recruitment in large public companies. Again, Simon, really great to have you on the call with us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So the first section, we'll get going with the first section of our call, and I'll come back around to Nicola. Rob, if you're okay to spotlight Nicola on the call. So Nicola, if you can just give me an overview of your pathway of your career, your current job role, and yeah, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Morning, everyone. Really nice to meet you all. So yeah, I'm Nicola Webb, and I own Robert's Webb Recruitment, which is a recruitment business based on the Wirral, but we do support companies all across the UK. We've only been established a couple of years, so we're coming up to our 2nd birthday in April, which is very exciting because last year was a little bit rocky for recruitment, but I'll come on to more of that later. Just to sort of go back to my roots, really, just to go back to my education, I had a pretty linear education. So I went to Wirral Grammar School in Bebbington, stayed there, did my GCSEs, got to the end of my GCSEs, didn't really know what to do, so decided to stay on for my A-levels for a couple more years just to bide a little bit of time. Then got to the end of my A-levels, still didn't know what I wanted to do, and it was a little bit pressure, you know, do I go to uni? Do I leave? Do I find a job? Fortunately, we had a really lovely careers advisor based at Wirral Grammar, so I sat down with her, sort of went through my sort of expectations for post-school life, and I did decide to go down the university route. So I went to Liverpool University, where I studied a really broad degree, which was law and business. And again, it was sort of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do after uni. So I thought if I could do something quite broad, then hopefully I could take some skills away from the degree that I might find useful later in life. And also all my friends were going to uni. I didn't want to miss out on that sort of life. So for me, it was just the right option. But it's not to say that obviously uni is the best route for everybody. But my degree, with it being so broad, it covered things like contract law, employment law, entrepreneurship, accountancy basics, bit of marketing. So I got some really, really useful skills there. And whilst I was there, I sort of fell in love with the business side and especially the entrepreneurial side of things, which I think has given me a little bit of a kickstart into always planting the seed of having my own business. So anyway, fast forward to the end of my degree, finished, and thought, oh gosh, I still don't know what I want to do. So then it was, you know, you're out in the real world. I decided to sign up with a recruitment agency just to do some temporary work whilst I was looking for a permanent role. And they put me in placements like covering reception for car garages, doing data entry for sort of small businesses, doing a little bit of telesales for a larger company. So even though I was only there for sort of 3 months at a time, I was building up really, really good experience and sort of being pushed into different sort of roles that I'd never even considered before, and definitely out of my comfort zone. If you would have told me at uni I would have had to cold call businesses, I'd have been, no way, definitely not me, petrified. So it was a really good opportunity to just do something that I didn't think I was going to be doing. Then the recruitment agency that I was temping with gave me a call and they said, oh, actually, we've got a role here as a recruitment consultant. Would you be interested? I didn't even know what a recruitment consultant did, really, if I'm completely honest. But I said, yeah, I'll come in, let's have a chat. So I went in for a cup of tea, and they sort of explained to me what a recruitment consultant does, and how it was a blend of sort of customer service, business development, really getting to know people and building relationships. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite good. It sounds quite varied, so I'll give it a go. So fast forward, another 6 to 12 months, and I'd started working for a recruitment agency in Liverpool called Forest Recruitment. Absolutely loved my time there, and spent the next 4 years working in a couple of different recruitment agencies, just getting experience of, learning the ropes, building some confidence, placing people in sort of head office type roles. Then back in 2013, so I'd been in recruitment for 4 years, I got approached by another recruiter who asked me, did I want to go and work as an in-house recruitment consultant? Again, I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. We'll have a chat. So I went along for the interview, and they explained that I would be recruiting only for one company as an in-house recruiter, and they were looking to double in size. So I was very lucky to be offered the job and spent a good couple of years working for this business as an in-house recruiter. Very different to agency recruitment, a lot less sales, quite a lot of pressure still, lots of targets, but very, very different environment, and good to be able to see how a business operates sort of end to end. So I stayed in internal recruitment for 7 years. I moved around a little bit to try and get more experience, and I was really lucky. I went to work for a nuclear business, which was weird and wonderful. I got to travel across to Sweden to go on the nuclear power plants. Really great opportunity. Then I've worked for medical devices. Again, totally different to nuclear, but very, very eye-opening. I got to travel across hospitals, looking at medical device products and what they do and how they impact people's lives. And obviously the key aim of my role was always to recruit really great individuals into these businesses. Finally, sort of a couple of years ago, I thought I've built up some really, really good experience here. I love recruitment now. It's sort of in my DNA. I really do want to try and work for myself. And that's where it sort of led me to starting Robert's Webb Recruitment. So I thought, I've got a good grounding, I've done the legwork, I've built up a little bit of credibility, I know what I'm doing. So yeah, I decided to pull all that information together, and here I am. So now as I said before, I work with lots of different businesses. Some are very small, some are really big, still global. And I spend the time getting to know those companies, understanding what they do, what their products, what their services are. And they come to me and sort of say, well, we need a finance manager, for example. Can you go and find us one? So I'll spend the time looking at the market, trying to interview candidates, assessing their skills, their personality to see if they're a good fit for the business. And obviously, sort of matchmaking in a way is the easiest way to describe recruitment. You're a matchmaker. You find a candidate the perfect job, and you find a company the perfect person. So the day in a life of a recruitment manager now, having my own business, there's only me and 2 others. So we're a very, very small team, and we're still finding our feet. But it's very varied. I do everything from business development, account management, finance. I have to look after the accountancy side of the business. So it's, you wear very many hats, but I love it. It's very varied, and you get to speak to lots of different people every day. So yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell, and my education leading into career and where I am now.
That was brilliant, Nicola. Just one question for you. Yeah. How important is it, do you think, leading into your business now that you've had all those different roles in the past, and you understand different roles and kind of understand the need and the skills for each one of them as a kind of manager and owner of a business yourself now?
Yeah, it's so important, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to work in different size businesses, different industries, because they all operate so differently. And what I managed to learn from one company, I've been able to take and implement into a different company. And each different role had its own challenges, put me outside my comfort zone many a times, forced me to sort of learn skills that I didn't already have. So as I said, I definitely wouldn't be here now unless I'd been on that journey and worked in the different sort of environments and different level roles, really.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice to anyone on the call, maybe starting off on their journey to kind of to understand the importance of working in different roles. And yeah, I think that's some really great advice. Yeah, well, thanks very much for that, Nicola. I'm sure we'll come back to you in the next section with some more questions. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
So David, we're going to move over to you now. Rob, are you okay to spotlight David? David, so yeah, similar to Nicola, are you able to give an overview of your career, your pathway, your current job role, and everything up to this point, really?
Yeah, certainly happy to do so. First of all, good morning, everybody. I'm excited to join you all. Slightly nervous now that I've got to follow Nicola, because I think she did a fabulous job explaining with crystal clear clarity what she did. So as you already know, my name is David Wafer. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey so far to date. I'll start off from obviously my younger days. I grew up in Halewood. I lived in a 3-bed semi, and I was the youngest of 5 kids. And the reason I tell you this, I know we've got a fairly eclectic mix of people on the call, from some in school, some students, and some people who are maybe not too dissimilar age to me, looking to maybe change their career. And that if I think back to when I was younger, I certainly didn't ever expect that I'd potentially be in a professional services based role. I very much believe that it was likely I'd end up in maybe a kind of steady Eddie job, that I'd people whose dads were my friends' dads rather would often work in Fords, Jaguar Land Rover as it is now, and they would have careers that were absolutely good opportunities, but wouldn't necessarily be focused on something whereby you'd be dealing with professionals on a day-to-day basis. And if I think back when I was younger, it was a challenge at times to kind of see the aspiration of the future of where I'd hope to get to. And that 5 kids in a 3-bed semi meant that my eldest sister had the box room, and 4 of us lived in essence, slept in 1 bedroom. So, it was 2 sisters in single beds and me and my brother in a bunk bed. And I think that, why I point that out is that, I'm sure there'll be lots of people on this call who've also had similar circumstances. And I think that, we have a choice in life whether that helps to build resilience, or whether that makes us believe that we can't advance in terms of opportunities for the future. Now, I always believed that, as long as I worked hard and I applied myself, then I'd be able to carve out a career for myself. Now, I can't sit here and say nobody grows up and thinks, oh, I'd love to be a recruiter. That's not one of those jobs that you ever think, oh, like a nurse or a doctor or a policeman or a fireman or whatever it might be. You just don't do that. So for me, it was just about working as hard as I possibly could, getting on, seeing what opportunities came. I enjoyed school, but it was a challenge for lots of time. I didn't, particularly in exams, excel. I ended up with 6 GCSEs, which my teachers would tell me that I should have tried harder, I should have worked harder, and that I should have been coming out with better results. And I felt like I was working hard. I felt like I was putting the application in. And it was only when I went to do my A-levels that as I got towards the end of the 2 years, and I'd been involved in school debating teams, I'd gone and got myself a part-time job, that one of the teachers who was the A-level teacher had said to me, look, there seems to be something missing, and that you seem to have the knowledge, the thirst, the intellect to be able to do this, but I'm not seeing this coming through in the results. And it's the first time I've ever actually shared this, because I think that a lot of the time people make a presumption along the university route, which I'll come on to a little bit later, but they then assess me for dyslexia. So I am actually dyslexic. Whilst, you know, for lots of people, and certainly back in that day, it was very much viewed as, you know, a real hindrance, I genuinely, in a cheesy way, look at it as a superpower. And that, you know, dyslexics, and if you look into it, are wired in a slightly different way. You know, I assimilate information very, very quickly. I grasp things very quickly. You know, I'm not comparing myself to Richard Branson, but Richard Branson is also dyslexic. And I think that you have a natural entrepreneurial flair for solving problems, and that I didn't cope well in exams, and that often when I'd sit there and I'd think, okay, I've got this particular assignment to do, I'd be a perfectionist and try and rewrite 2 or 3 times over and waste an awful lot of my time in exams and come away feeling frustrated. So I realised then that obviously achieving some of the things I maybe hoped to achieve would become more and more of a challenge. And I left college and went and got a part-time job. So I was already working in Asda in a supermarket, and I went to work for BT. And it was very much a kind of, you know, I knew somebody who worked there. I went and got a job, and 6 months later I was a manager, and I'd become the most successful salesperson in the BT channel across the UK. And part of my relationship building with customers had been developed so that it was then written into the script and call guide right across the UK. And then from there, I spent some really good time working for BT, and the share price halved. And somebody, I still blame them to this day, said to me, have you ever thought of a career in recruitment? And I hadn't, and a little bit like what Nicola said, I was kind of like, well, you know, really, what does this do and how does it work? And because the BT share price had halved, I was worried I was going to get made redundant. And I went and had a chat and was offered a role in recruitment. And the first year, I absolutely hated it, because I've been used to selling a product, which, you know, a product either works or it doesn't work. You can explain the features and advantages, benefits of it, but every person's different, every client's different, and I found it really hard to get my head around. And I in many ways, had circumstances not been as they were at that time, I probably would have left. Home life was a struggle. My mum had real mental health issues for an awful lot of years of my growing up. And I was determined in some ways, not just to get through it, but work was also an escape, and that I had to get a sense of achievement out of it. So I did just that. I started to apply myself. I started to make sure that I could learn every aspect of the role. I focused on the people part of it, which I really enjoyed. And from there, started to build a career. Within the second year, I'd won an award. I then went to another company, Adecco, and worked there for 13 years. And I was really, really lucky in that I worked for 2 bosses who gave me the autonomy that I needed to be successful. And I think that's something that can't be underestimated, is that you have to find a boss that you have trust in each other for you to be able to blossom. I'd worked for one boss previously who wanted me to do the job in a straitjacket, and trying to do the job in a straitjacket, if you're the type of person who needs the freedom to do it, is an impossible task. And so in a relatively short space of time, I'd become, you know, permanent consultant of the year. That's somebody who recruits for permanent jobs. I'd then become manager of the year, and I was lucky enough to be manager of the year 5 years on the bounce out of a UK-wide company, and was amazingly lucky to win trips to Mauritius, the Bahamas, Las Vegas, Sicily, go on hot air balloons, go on helicopters. That was all funded by the company. And it wasn't, I don't tell you this because I'm great, you know, I'm very That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm very much, average Joe. But if you work hard and apply yourself, then you really can achieve what you want to achieve. I ended up becoming an ops manager for the company. I loved an awful lot about that role. However, I then, towards the end, found a boss who also wanted me to do the job in a straitjacket. And that wasn't for me. And hence, I set up my own business 6 years ago. It has been a amazing journey. A little bit like what Nicola said yesterday, last year was certainly had its challenges. I'd gone from a role where working wasn't necessary part of it. You were dealing a lot of it with the clients that were kind of already there, and starting a new business. And especially, I was doing it when I was 38. So, I had 2 kids, had a mortgage, and to pack in a job with a significant salary took, a real boldness to do that. But, it's absolutely the best thing I ever did. And the autonomy and freedom suits me down to the ground. Hopefully there'll be some other people who can look, at other routes and say they don't just have to look at a job and a career path. They can also look at their own business. But you've got to work hard, and it doesn't stop. There's no 9 to 5. You have to do what you do. There's regularly times if I've gone on a holiday, or this week I've been interviewing people at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night on Zoom. You got to do what you got to do to make sure that you're successful. So a little bit more rugged than Nicola's, but hopefully gives you the flavour of my path to date.
Thanks very much, David. That was really insightful and inspirational for, I'm sure, most of the participants on the call. And yeah, the question I'm going to ask you is around setting up a business. And I know you set yours up 6 years ago, and participants on the call might be at different stages of their pathway, but if they were looking to kind of set a business up now, post COVID or around this kind of time period now, what advice would you give to them? I know you talked about hard work and kind of having a passion for it, but obviously the landscape has changed over the last 12 months. So what advice would you give to someone on the call who is looking to set up their business now or in the very near distant future?
Yeah, I think the one thing to be very optimistic about is that like a phoenix from the ashes, in any post-recessionary period, more businesses do get set up. Every time that we have a downturn, on the back of it, more and more people look to set up their own business. I think it's crucial that you make sure you're aware of the competitive landscape in the area that you're looking at, that you're a realist. 9 out of 10 businesses fail when they set up. So that lots of people get sold on the idea and they get very excited about it. So if I think of restaurants, for example, we've seen a boom in Liverpool of restaurants over the years, of people think it'll be exciting, it'll be fun. But the harsh reality is lots of them don't make it. And that's because the cost and the profit margin, so that that's the difference between what it costs you to run a business and the amount you charge, the bit in the middle, is that's not enough to keep you going. And so I'd say, make sure you do your research, make sure you build a network in that space. Networking is more important than ever to make your business grow. And it's making sure you've tapped into each of these different areas before you go into it, rather than trying to do it blind and hoping it'll be successful. The days of thinking, I'll build it and they will come, that's just not the case. And that includes for, professional firms, as well, is that, in previous years, whether it be law firms or professional services, maybe 20 years ago, could set up and people would normally come to them in a kind of doctor-patient relationship. That's no longer the case. Lawyers also need to be salespeople now.
Thanks for that, David. I think that was really great advice around kind of the importance of networking, and I'm sure we'll have some more questions from the team and participants following up that later on. But yeah, thanks again, David. Really do appreciate that, and we'll come back soon with some more questions. Last of all, we'll go on to Simon Ward. Simon, again, thanks for joining us on the call today. If you can give your career overview, your pathway up to today.
Okay, so David and Nicola are absolutely right. I think recruitment is one of those industries that people fall into. But as they say, there's always an exception that proves the rule. So I might be that in so much that my mum, my dad, my brother, my sister were all recruiters, either career-length recruiters or for a period in their careers. So it was kind of set in the stars. I was almost a born recruiter. The problem was I didn't want to be one. So we'll talk about my slightly checkered academics in a minute. But when I left college without a degree, I wanted to be a sports agent. So I got myself a job offer from IMG, who at that time had 10 people working in the UK. They've gone on to, oh God, who knows how many people they've got at Wembley and everywhere else now. But they didn't have headcount. There was then a bereavement in my family, and I had to go work in the family business. So I did end up following the family line, and it's been the most fantastic life. I am not sure if I have any hard skills at all. Everything that has happened in my life has happened down to what would be called transferable skills or soft skills, and that's for me is the great thing about recruitment. In all of my time in recruitment, I can't think of two people who have followed the same path into recruitment. They come from such a very diverse background that recruitment is so relevant right now as an industry, because there are large numbers of people that are on the jobs market coming out of industries that have been hit incredibly hard by COVID. And recruitment does offer an opportunity to jump from one industry to another if you have the right transferable skills. And one of the key ones, and David touched on it, is hard work and resilience, bouncing back and starting again. And in a way, that sort of leads me on to my academics, and just to prove that you can have a career in recruitment with some fairly average academics. My family comes from Birkenhead. I have a small relationship with Nicola, and so she went to school in Bebbington, and my granddad ran the co-op in Bebbington for many years. But then my mum and dad moved south from Birkenhead when things were really tough, and to try to find work down here. So I've spent most of my life in the south, went to school, played a lot of sport, did very little academic work, got to the end of second year of A-levels, and there were 2 sports tours abroad the following year that I could get onto. So I stayed and did third year of A-levels, got worse A-levels the second time than I did the first time, but had a fantastic time playing sport. Couldn't find a college that would take me because my qualifications had gone backwards, and talked myself into a place at Bradford to read economics and politics. Turned up at Bradford, no one knew who I was, because whoever I'd sold it to, just because my surname was Ward, just put the name at the bottom of the entry list. And I turned up, no accommodation, no one was expecting me at the university, no one was expecting me at lectures. And that kind of defined my career at uni. Just about past the first year, I dislocated a hip and fractured a pelvis around about Christmas of the second year. Spent 3 months in Stoke Mandeville. While I was in there, they elected me president of Students' Union, which was sabbatical, so I didn't have to do any more academics, which was brilliant. And I then did about 18 months in the Students' Union, which taught me more. I had 27 members of staff, a turnover of about 3 million quid. We had laundrettes, we had supermarkets, we had bars, lots of bars. We had a travel agency, and I was responsible for all that at the age of 21. So that was a bit of a wake-up call. I then left after 3 years at uni without a degree, and I've never, in the 700 years that I've been working, or it feels like it, I've never recruited someone or not challenged the idea that someone has to have a degree or a certain level of academics, unless it is a function of the role itself. So if it's medicine or law or accounting, because what I have found is it's down to the person, and that's the great thing about recruitment, and why I've stuck in it for as long as I have, is there is a certain type in recruitment who tends to be successful, and they're resilient, and they have personality and character, and they can bounce back, and they have to. Recruitment can be a tough market. They like competition, but at the same time, they enjoy being a part of a team. It's kind of like the only comparison I can make is a Formula One team. So the person you want to beat most is the guy in the car next to you in your garage, but at the same time, the cars don't get on the road unless you're a part of a team completely. So you have that, and I've loved that for years and years and years. Went through, my first job was on Brook Street, with Brook Street Bureau before I went to the family business. My first placement was a receptionist with ICL Computers on Putney Bridge. It was a 1-week temp booking. She stayed until the Thursday, never turned up on the Friday. I always remember her name. I won't say, I guess she's still around, but that was not the most auspicious start to recruitment. And I was making apologies for my very first deal. And that's kind of how it went. I then worked in my family business, which was called the Job Shop. And then I went into contract recruitment in technology. And that was the toughest environment, and yet the most fun environment I've ever worked in. 7 o'clock morning starts, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening finishes, across the road to a pub. It was really, really tough. And some people will say that I was in recruitment before email. I was in recruitment before the internet. I was in recruitment before the fax. I mean, that's how old I am. I've seen a lot of changes in recruitment, but the one thing that has stayed solid throughout are the nature, the character, the personality of the people who succeed. They can communicate, they can work hard, and they believe that they deserve the life they want, and they're going to work for it, and they're going to get it. And those are great people. So first of all, academics are no barrier. They used to say that you just need to make a telephone work to have a career in recruitment. It's more complex than that. You need a little bit more than that, but it's about those personal skills. So don't be put off by a lack of anything. I mean, I think academics can be used by so many people as an excuse to not pursue something. I don't have this, I don't have that, I haven't got this. Look at yourself. That in recruitment, that's what's going to get you by. It's who you are, not a bit of paper, not necessarily the experience you've had in the past. So it's trust yourself, work with people, and I think we're going to talk later about the advice that we would give to people going into work. One of the most important things is be nice. I do some business coaching now. I run a business called the JobzLab, which works with people to help them create competitive, compelling CVs and LinkedIn processes, and work through a very detailed process to get a job. We were called I Got Hired, and we had to close that brand because we spent all last year just giving our stuff away. We thought it was appropriate. Well, didn't think it was appropriate to charge people. Let's put it like that. So we gave things away for a year. It's very difficult to get back from that. So we've rebranded as JobzLab. And it's great. And the JobzLab came around from a bit of a midlife crisis after I'd been head of recruitment at a firm called Legal & General. My eldest son tells me it was a late life crisis. I'd like to claim it was a midlife crisis. I couldn't afford a Ferrari. I had terrible dress sense as it was, so I decided to write a book. Never done it before, had no idea how to do it. So I sat down and suddenly I'd written a book. And that book became 5 books, which is the playbooks now behind the JobzLab, was behind the I Got Hired. And it became the foundation for the process and the approach that we have in JobzLab. I had no idea what I was doing when I first sat down and wrote a book. I had a little bit of time, and I had, I think, some of that ballsy, I can do this approach. So I've written a book, and they've gone well. The JobzLab is going well. I'm getting to meet some fantastic people. There is nothing better than when you get that note saying I've taken the green badge off, open to work on LinkedIn at the moment. I get massive satisfaction out of what I do. And I have a number of people all around the world. I've got about 30 guys doing different things for me all around the world. And the one thing, almost without exception, is none of them have done this before. They have skills, they have transferable skills. None of them have worked in a business that do what we do. And I've hired them on who they are. and a lot of them are just contractors and associates, etc. But I've hired them on who they are. I've never even asked about education. So that's kind of me. As I say, so it's JobzLab now. I still do a bit of executive search. I do a little bit of work with organizations to help them improve their recruitment. And I'm sorry, David and Nicola, most of the work I do is helping them to build processes and capabilities to recruit without using agencies and suppliers. So I get my apologies in early. And I do business coaching. Someone said to me the other day that I'm the disaster recovery coach. Not because they've had a disaster, but I've had so many. And I coach from a view of this, I really messed this up. I really messed up. Learn from my mistakes, don't make them, rather than telling you that I'm a fantastic businessman. I can do this and I can do that, and I've done that, and I can come and change your business. People will learn 10 times more from either their own mistakes, which takes guts, or other people's mistakes, which takes listening, than they ever do from their own successes and other people's successes. So that looking at yourself, there's a longer word for that, looking at yourself and seeing what your strengths are and what you have learned from every mistake that you've made as you've gone along would be my key message. And never, ever, ever give up. I still believe my hair is going to grow back. Never give up.
Oh, first of all, thanks for sharing your pathway, Simon. Really kind of interesting and insightful, and yeah, I really do appreciate that. And the one question I've got to you before we go into the rest of the questions would be around being able to adapt. Now, you've talked around the idea of technology kind of changing throughout your career in recruitment. How important is it kind of for participants to adapt to that now in a COVID world? I know how we apply for jobs, how we interview for jobs, even how we carry our own jobs, whether it be kind of remote. How important is it that participants are able to bring that skill of being able to adapt as well?
I think it's really important to adapt to everything. You know, there's nothing in my life that is the same as it was last year, and last year there was nothing in my life that was really the same the year before. So adaptation, that ability to flex and embrace the change, old cliche, embrace the change, see that change is really important, not just as in technology, but I think the other thing is to keep that change in perspective. So a lot of people at the moment are worried about, I've got to do my interview on Zoom. And COVID has kind of brought Zoom interview into our national conscience as if it's something new. I actually put a post up 2 hours ago saying that HireView, which is probably the leading internet-based video interviewing platform, launched in 2004. We've been talking to people on Skype for the best part of 2 decades. It's not new. It's being used differently, but at the end of the day, you're still just talking to someone. You're having a conversation. You prep slightly differently. You get your tech right. You get your location right. You get your background right when you can. But that you don't get scared of change. The one thing I would say about a lot of this stuff, Zoom interviews, etc., is because it is perceived to be new, candidates are getting cut a little bit more slack. So you actually have less to be nervous about, because the guy at the other end, he or she may not have done a Zoom interview for a while either. So yeah, adapt, embrace it, but don't be scared of it.
Brilliant. I think that was absolutely fantastic advice, Simon. Thank you very much.
James, just very quickly, David's had his hand up on one of the comments that Simon said, so if we can just go over to David, that'll be...
Sure. David, over to you for your question. I think you're just on mute.
Sorry, obviously I've clearly not used Zoom before. I should have had a t-shirt, shouldn't I, with you're on mute. I just wanted to pick up on one of Simon's points about the education. And I know we've got a couple of school groups on, and I think this is really, really important. You know, education is, of course, absolutely vital and a key part of the knowledge that we acquire. But at times when you're choosing a career path, and people often view that university has to be that career path. I wanted to just give you a couple of stats to highlight a couple of areas for consideration, and that 1% of people with a science degree work in forensic science. the average earnings of somebody who does a psychology degree 6 months after graduating is 16 grand. 42 months after graduating is 19 grand. That is nearly 7 years from when they started it. Now, by anybody's stretch of the imagination, you could decide whether that is necessarily a good investment or not. If you're going to be in one of those specific fields, it is. But don't think that you failed because you didn't get to university and you didn't get to go through that process. Lots of industries, for example, law, in September is changing some of the rules around the career path that you can go on to become a lawyer. And so you've got to look at what is best for you. I mean, even something like law, to give you an example, the last 2 years, there have been just shy of 25,000 law graduates each year. And for people of my age and older, they think, oh, it'll be great for our kids to go and get a law degree. They're guaranteed a great career and that will pan out. But there's only 5,700 training contracts each year. So that means, you know, a huge majority of people are ending up in jobs. There's still good jobs, paralegals and so on. But by the time they're 30, they may be lucky that lots of them will be earning £30,000, where maybe they were expected to earn £60,000. So you've got to weigh up whether sometimes you're better to go another route, and that on-the-job experience, the building the resilience and actually having the skills of doing the job often count more than a university degree. Because so many more people are getting a university degree, the value of them and the currency of them is maybe different to what it was 20 years ago. So, you know, don't be kind of thinking, oh, well, you know, these people are special because they've all gone and got a university degree. And I'm not, I'm just, you know, bog standard and I can't really expect to achieve much more. Well, you absolutely can, for all the points that Simon made. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I think that's really great advice, David. And yeah, I think what we've had on the call previously are people at different stages in their pathway. So in college, in school, and yeah, I think that advice is really great. And hopefully these calls are able to provide people with pathways that are not just university, like you've talked about there, and kind of different pathways. And yeah, hopefully the kind of pathways that we're providing on these calls kind of give people inspiration to go down different routes. So yeah, I completely agree with you there, David. So thanks for sharing that. So now all our three guest speakers have been spotlighted. We'll ask our question on one of our club values. So in all of our Careers Uncovered calls, we've been asking about specific club values, and today's one is focused on ambition. So the question I'm going to ask to all three of you is, why is it important to be ambitious on your pathway in employment? Does anyone want to take that first? Nicola, do you want to take that first? Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I think with ambition, it's just about setting yourself goals and trying to focus on what you want in the future, and accepting that even though you've got goals, you still need to break them down into sort of smaller bite-sized chunks, because you can't take on everything and you're not going to succeed overnight. It's a really long path, and often it's like this. You have really good times and then you hit rock bottom and you pick yourself up again. But that ambition, that drive, you know, your long-term goals always remain the same. So I'd say just don't get too bogged down if things don't happen straight away. Keep focused, keep working. Like David and Simon said, keep adapting, work really, really hard. And ambitious, you know, it's just about going for it, no matter what life throws at you, really.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Simon, would you like to take that next?
Yeah, I think my message would be that it's your ambition. So ambition can mean a million different things to different people, and success can be judged by 1,000 different metrics, you know, personal, financial, career, credibility, whatever. So it's important to have ambition in all parts of your life, because life's a journey and things change, and ambition will drive you to the positive change more readily than a lack of ambition tends you to just let you drop into the negative change. But just realize that it's your ambition, it's your path, and you set those goals for yourself. I've spent most of my life trying to live up to what my dad expected of me. You know, I wanted to be a football agent or I wanted to be a politician, but my dad thought the only real jobs involved a desk and a tie, and therefore that ruled out a lot of the things I wanted to do. And it was only when I got to 50, I realized I probably wasn't going to be a professional footballer or a rock star after all. So I had those ambitions, but have your own and be flexible and change, recognize where you are, reset, and constantly have targets, however big or small they are.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Simon. And David, over to you.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'd agree with both points. I think Nicola's point about bite-sized chunks, I think is very important. You know, yes, we can set a long-term goal, but I remember reading a few years ago a book by John Baird, who's the guy who founded The Big Issue. And his story is that, you know, at one time he was homeless, and now I think he's actually a lord. And one of the things in the book, it says, he talked about it was starting with 3%. And he said, you know, lots of people set targets and big ambitions that seem unrealistic and so far away, so it's easy to give up. And he said that if you focus on just 3%, and whether it be each day, each week, each month, then before you know it, 3% turns to 6%, to 18%, and so on, and you're a lot closer to your goal. So, you know, focus on what that might be. For me personally, when I was younger, and because I didn't really have two pennies to rub together as a kid, you know, once I got into a role where I had the destiny of my earnings kind of sitting on my own shoulders, I decided that I wanted to earn £1,000 for every year I was. That was my first target, and then it turned into 2,000 and 3,000 and so on. And it wasn't, strangely, it wasn't about the money itself. It was about what I could do with the money. So my first goal in a job was that once I earned some bonus, I wanted to take my mum and dad to Paris, because they'd always wanted to go. And so being able to do that, you know, meant the world to me, and the money made that happen.
Again, really interesting advice. And I think one thing I've took from all your advice there is the importance of setting goals, but also to dream big. It's okay to dream big, and it might not necessarily be around the corner, but it's important to dream big, and those bite-sized chunks along the way are going to help you to get there. So again, really great advice from all three of our guest speakers there. Really do appreciate that. What I'm going to do now is going to kind of move over to Rob, who's got some questions from the team and participants on the call as well.
Yeah, so cheers, James. I know we're quite scarce of time, and there's been lots and lots of questions coming in. So what I'll try and do is put it to an individual guest speaker, and we'll try and get through as many as we can, because there is quite a few that have come in. So just shows how good the call's been today. So the first question I have is we'll go to Simon for this one. Is what do you see as your top two behavioural competencies when you're going to be an entrepreneur? So what are your top two skills to become a successful entrepreneur, Simon?
So I mentioned earlier that I coach from a position of failure. So these are two things that I wasn't particularly good at, but they're most. Be nice, be organised. I think that would be my two. I don't think people always understand, and the younger I was, the less I understood it. The power of nice, the power of just being decent to the people around you, treating them well with a bit of consideration. The things that I used to get angry and throw my toys out the pram about, you look back a year later and they just didn't matter, but you might have offended someone, you might have lost a supporter, you might have, so just being nice, being proud of yourself because you're nice, and that's a long journey lesson for me. I think if ADHD existed nowadays, when I was young, I probably had it. I've got a hell of a temper, and I can say things to hurt. So I'm not, I've worked hard to be a nice bloke. Secondly, be organised. Organization, again, not my greatest natural skill, and James will confirm this. But the benefits of being organized are immense. You get trusted, you get a reputation for being a delivery person, you're reliable. All of those things actually are embedded in your personal organization. So put the effort into being organized, and then you get all of these other side effects as well. But yeah, power of nice is an important one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And this one's going to have to go to everybody because it was a generic question, which I don't know if any of you guys have had this, but has anyone had a mentor? And if so, how much impact did it have on you and your journey as a career?
I don't mind answering this one. I've had a mentor. In fact, I've had quite a few different ones, and I think they're so important. And I think they can just give you advice. They give you options that you might not have thought of. They give you a little push in the right direction when you might be feeling a little bit lost. So I think for me, a really good mentor is invaluable. I definitely recommend one. And it doesn't have to be somebody, you know, with a corporate career. It can be anybody that you're feeling comfortable to speak with and, you know, that you just want to talk to about things. So if you can, get a mentor.
I think, Rob, can I just add to that? Agree with everything Nicola said. I think that we should all have a mentor, whether we class it with an uppercase M. Throughout our lives, we want other people that we can lean on, that we can ring up, that we can have a conversation with, and it doesn't have to be formal, where you've got a recognised kind of mentor relationship. But there'll be lots of people who ring me and they just want to run something past me, and vice versa, that you just want a sounding board. And whether you're 16 or 66, I think it's great for your mental health, and it's also great for business.
So I've had a number of mentors too, and some walked away and refused to mentor me because I wasn't that nice. But the one that's hung around the most was a woman that I hired 25 years ago as an assistant. She was always better than me. She was always going to go better than me. She's now a global HRD in her own right. I happen to have married her about 10, 15 years ago. But she is by far the relationship. If you're going to have a close relationship with your life partner, but I think successful mentoring is around the trust to be intimate about your thoughts. So let them know your greatest fears. Let them know what's kept you awake the night before. If you try to impress your mentor, then the mentor relationships are no good at all.
Some amazing advice there, and I think there's a lot of staff within the employability team as well that if any of these need a little bit of help, or you've got questions for any of the guest speakers, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to send an email to us and we can get it back to you as well. Last few then, there's been loads, but how does everybody feel about interviewing on Zoom? Whether if you've had to interview somebody on Zoom, and what is your biggest sort of experience and advice for people who might be going to interviews via Zoom or Teams, which I'm sure most interviews are at the moment?
Yeah, I think interviewing on Zoom can be really daunting for some people. Historically, you know, we've all interviewed face to face, and you pick up on more body language and things like that. My advice would be just to make sure that you've got a nice quiet room, check your internet connection beforehand, get a glass of water on the desk, just basically do a bit of preparation before your Zoom interview. Everyone has little technology glitches, it might happen, don't beat yourself up about it, but just treat it as you would a normal interview. So still look smart, be professional, still smile, and they're my key tips really.
I think it can be a daunting experience, and we've all had technology fails. I think Simon's point about people are a little bit more forgiving. If it makes anybody feel any better, the back end of last year I hosted an event as the chair of the IOD with Steve Rotherham and Andy Burnham, who are the Northwest Metro Mayors, and I was doing it in this seat. I tested my internet connection, all worked, and come back to my desk after dropping one of the kids off at school, and I couldn't get online. And I knew there was 250 people waiting. And I often take most things in my stride, but it'd be fair to say that I was a little bit stressed. I ended up doing the event on me mobile. And at times, although my phone was on silent, it wasn't blocking calls. So I was getting text and calls partway through. And at times I'd ask a question and then Steve Rodden would be in the middle of answering it. And I couldn't hear his answer because I could just see somebody trying to ring me. And I'm sitting there like we all are now on camera, smiling like this, not knowing what time it was. I was dying inside, thinking, oh my God, this is a disaster. And felt like, I was kind of tensed for an hour, but I got through it. And in actual fact, when I made a joke about it at the end, and actually sat back in my chair, unfortunately, while I was still live and went, oh, thank God. It wasn't the end of the world, is that we get through it. It often feels much worse for us when that happens than it actually appears outwardly. And lots of people said to me, oh, we didn't even realize you had any tech problems. You just kind of got on with it. And so I think getting on with it and just having that kind of, determination, you've got no choice, a bit like somebody on stage, if something goes wrong, you've just got to carry on. The show goes on. Very last year, I know I'm conscious at times, we asked for some tips, regardless of being via Zoom or not. I'd say, you sharing your passion for a job, your experience, and communicating with people to let them know what you can bring to the party is you can't go too far wrong if you do that in any interview.
And a couple of very quick pointers from me. One would be use the plus points for a Zoom interview. So you have a computer screen or a laptop screen, whatever is in front of you. Use that, stick Post-it notes on it. Get those evidential pieces there, the numbers that you're going to trip over in an interview. Have them on Post-it notes around the edge of your screen. The only bit of your screen you don't have to cover up is the camera, after all. So you've got something in front of you you can't use in a normal interview. So make the most of that. Secondly, if things go wrong, the point that they make so important. There was an interview a little while ago between Richard Quest and the CEO of Trivago on CNN, and his 10-year-old son walked in halfway through the interview and demanded to be put to bed. The Trivago CEO, whose name I can't remember now, just embraced it completely, as did Richard Quest. The guy sat on his dad's knee for the rest of the interview. He came away looking like a better guy than if he'd shooed him out the room. So if something happens, embrace it. We're all human. You may have a child working in the house with you at the moment. They might too. And then finally, I suppose the final piece of advice is look at the camera, not at your screen. I'm rubbish at this. David's been brilliant at it. I've been watching him, and Nicola's really good too. That's it. So yeah, what they call magnet eyes apparently on homeschooling. So yeah, make sure you have that discipline, because eye contact is still really, really important. That'd be my pointers, I guess.
Some great advice there. Now I'm feeling a lot better because I know I've made a couple of mistakes when I've been contacting all 3 guest speakers this week. So thanks for that. You just made me feel a lot better about myself. I'm going to go to the last 2 because I think these are very, very important. And if we haven't answered anyone else's, we'll get them together and we'll make sure we ask the speakers via email, because I'm cautious of time. But how important is it to work for different companies before you get to your dream job to get that experience? And I know, sort of old school ways, you had to have one job for 20 years and it looked bad for working in different companies. But I think it was Nicola who mentioned and everybody how important that journey is. So what would your advice be to somebody just starting off and might need to leave a job to get that experience? Sorry, David, I think you muted there. Sorry.
I think I keep on unmuting myself at the same time you do, so I end up back on mute. I think for me, each person's journey is individual to them. The likelihood is that people will have more jobs than they did, our mums and dads did. The average day in a job now is actually just over 3 years, and has been decreasing over the last 20 years. And it will probably get shorter again in the future, because people want better, people want a work-life balance, people want things that fit in with them and their culture that's more important. The thing that I would say and urge everybody, down the younger end who's still in school or in university, is get a part-time job. That is absolutely the best thing you can do. It gives you a mini society in the palm of your hand that you'll deal with. When I worked in Asda, I was partly terrified of John telling me off in the warehouse, that Margaret, who worked on the deli, was a bit like my mum, giving me a steer on different things, that I might have, like the girl who worked on one of the tills, all the things that are part and parcel of life that you get in a part-time job, of dealing with people, of not having everything your own way, of having to conform to rules and expectations. I went to speak to some sixth form students, well, not last year, the year before, and I asked them how many of them had a part-time job, and there was 3 out of a class of 30. And I said, okay, well, how do you get money? I was like, and they were like, well, from my mum and dad, obviously. Now, whilst people think that they're doing good, and I'm guilty of this with my own kids, I make them work for it. I make them realize that you have to understand the value of money, and you've got to go out and earn it. And by doing that, that in itself will teach you an awful lot for the future.
Brilliant. Okay, so last one, there's a couple of schools who I work with who are pupil referral units, and I know David touched on it briefly with his dyslexia and the challenges he's had, but what would everybody's advice be to people who have come out of school because they can't interact in that setting, and maybe teachers have sort of dismissed them to become successful, and the real good people who want to be successful maybe haven't had the support they needed, and the school system might have potentially not had time to do it, and they've gone elsewhere and they're working with a great pupil referral unit now. But what would be your advice to people like that?
If I can just give a very brief story from personal experience, someone very close to me was diagnosed with ADHD very young, had what was then called a special needs statement for 10, 12 years, used to throw furniture at teachers, got let out of school. He got a lot of support from the local authority. And one of the things that he was taught was to focus on the positives. And as someone close to him, I was taught to worry about the behavior, not the person, keep those two separated as well. But the upside is the guy looked at his problems, he worked very hard, he's now in his dream job, which sadly he works in Manchester City, which I find really hard to forgive him for, but he's absolutely, but it's been a tough journey. And if you do start your journey from a difficult place, it doesn't mean your journey can't end well. It just means you need a little bit more resilience, and you need a little bit more self-awareness and honesty about who you are and what are the challenges you face. But the journey's end can still get to be, going back to the ambition question, set, reset, little steps, get there. I've seen people get written off, and I've seen people write themselves off. I do quite a lot of work with guys with those kind of challenges, and the most important thing is stay true to the belief that you've got the right to a life and a career and growth and development.
No, some great advice there. So that's it for questions. I'll hand you back over to James, and he'll wrap it up with some great experiences and advice there. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. So first of all, I just want to really thank you from the team and probably all the participants on the call for our 3 guest speakers, Simon, David and Nicola today. It's been really inspiring. I'm sure we could definitely go on for another hour or so speaking, but I know we're a bit time constrained here. So again, from all the team and everyone on the call, thank you for all your inputs and your advice and your pathways. It's been really great to hear them. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen. This will be for the CV So for the QR code for the feedback and workshop, I have put the link for the feedback form in the chat function. But if you've not seen that, just scan your phone over this and that'll take you right to that. And then the last thing on this call will be for our safeguarding number. So if there's anyone on our call today, any participants who are struggling at the moment or kind of have any concerns in regards to safeguarding, this is our safeguarding number, which is a 24-hour number. So please ensure that you give that call if you need. And lastly, thanks everyone, all our participants, for joining the call today. Really been a great call, and thank you for joining. And yeah, hopefully we'll have some more Careers Uncovered calls soon, so keep an eye out for them. Again, thank you very much from everyone, all on the team, for all of our guest speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Been great.
Bye.